child. Yeah, I don't know about having two at this stage. That would have been a little too much. Yeah.
Start all over again.
Well, we would have started really early, you know. Anyway.
No, that's true.
Yeah. Having a much younger wife helps, though. I feel sorry for guys that are in their 30s. They don't want to have a kid. The wife's in their 30s, and the clock is ticking.
Yeah. Yeah, that's that.
Well, I was in my 50s, and I was ready. Yeah, in your 50s, you're going to be ready. You better be ready. If you're going to be ready at all. Anyway.
All right, let's
take
a quick one.
All right, here we go.
All right, here we go. Welcome to Sports Econ 101, the show where we discuss sports topics from a business perspective. I'm your host, Edward Brown, along with my co-host, Bruce McGowan, longtime sports radio personality. Today's show is going to be fun, even though football tomorrow is because we're recording this for Saturday. Tomorrow's the Super Bowl, but and that's what our trivia questions are going to be about Super Bowl, because it's the last chance to have Super Bowl
questions. There you go. Yeah. 50. This is the 52nd Super Bowl, by the way. 52. I can't believe I've watched every one. I've been to 10 of them. I just I feel old. You know, I remember the first one. Well, I don't know if it was yesterday, but I remember watching the Packers and the Chiefs at the Coliseum. And the Chiefs were the upstart from the AFL, and the Packers were, you know, this great juggernaut that had been around. And
it was a high school marching band.
That's right.
Show.
67,000 people showed up at the 100,000 seat Coliseum. It was not that big a deal. The Super Bowl really didn't become a big deal until Joe Namath and the Jets upset the Baltimore Colts in Miami 2 years later. That legitimized the American Football League, and they were going to merge the two leagues anyway, but that sort of sealed the deal.
I guess that's probably why the first one didn't seem so big, because they thought, it's a little upstart, you know. How good
well, the NFL always looked down its nose at the AFL, and they should have. The AFL had the Chiefs, they had the Raiders, they had the Jets, they had the Oilers. They had some good teams, they had some great, and they also gave a lot more opportunities to African-American players. Yes, much more so, yeah.
All right, we're going to surprise everyone with our guests. We won't even tell them who they are.
That's right.
We'll tell the audience who it is, or he'll just come on. But we'll just give them a hint. That's going to be baseball.
Yes.
All right. This segment of Sports Econ 101 is sponsored by Pacific Private Money, providing mortgage investments that are currently yielding over 7.5%, secured by real estate. They still do not have any losses after 1,400 loans. That's pretty good underwriting, I would say.
Not bad.
So that's the whole idea I tell people is preservation of principle.
I like that expression.
Right?
If that isn't a business expression, I don't know what it is.
Right.
Preservation of
that's
principle.
What Will Rogers said, right? He goes,
we'll hold the distinction of being the only nation in the history of the world that ever went to a poorhouse in an automobile.
All right, don't touch that. I'll be right back. Is that what he said, dude?
That's what he said. Yeah, Will Rogers. Had there been no Zanesville and no Follies, I would today be 12 miles south of Clam, Oklahoma, slopping for corn, or slopping the hogs.
Is that really how it's
for corn and knocking the Republican Party. That is considered a chore in my part of the country. I used to sing a song called Casey Jones, and then I'd spin a rope and whine into an old empty grain barrel. And in between the verses, I'd tell jokes about the Republican Party. I wasn't old enough to know what everybody was laughing at my jokes, but now that I'm a taxpayer, I know exactly what they're laughing at.
Well, you remember the whole shebang, huh?
Oh, yeah, Will Rogers was great. Will Rogers, my dad, I think I told you this story, my dad sat next to him on a plane in a cross-country flight. And back in 1932, a cross-country flight took about 10 hours.
I was going to say,
so my dad got to sit next to Will Rogers in first class, which, you know, imagine in the early 30s what first class must have been like, with Will Rogers for 10 hours.
It still couldn't have been so great, right?
What's that?
It's first class, still couldn't.
Yeah, you know, in those days, everything was new, and, you know, if you had a lot of money, you could be pretty comfortable. Didn't matter whether it was 10 hours or 5 hours.
But I mean, just thinking first class there compared to
that. Probably just as good. Probably just as good.
It's really interesting to kind of leave the planes. Okay, let's get our friend.
Yeah. Hopefully he's there. I talked to him about 15 minutes ago.
On his cell phone?
I think I went to his cell phone. Vida, please answer. Oh, Vida.
Is this our friend Vida Blue?
Yeah. Hey, Vida, what's going on, man? Sorry about that. I am such a space cadet today. I overslept. I got home late last night, and then I was doing some things. I went, holy shit! I got to get over to Edwards and do this show.
He just enjoyed being on his deck, relaxing. Yeah. It was a good weather.
Yeah, right. That's the truth. Anyway,
all right.
Let's
you all set? Okay, here we go. Well, welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Again, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Bruce McGowan. Bruce, our special guest, is on the phone. Would you please introduce him?
Yes, let him sign in, please. Actually, it's Vida who was a great pitcher back in the 1970s and 80s. Pitched for 17 years in the big leagues. The Blue Blazer broke in incredible fashion in 1971, winning both the Cy Young and the MVP awards. I don't think anybody's ever done that before. And was on the cover of Time magazine and Sports Illustrated. And Vida, it seems like that was a long time ago, but I know that the memories are still very distinct in your mind. What was it like breaking in with the A's back in the early 70s as a young kid out of Mansfield, Louisiana? I mean, that must have been a little heady stuff, a little overwhelming, wasn't it?
Well, not so much about breaking in with the A's to be out here in big liberal California.
Yeah.
Hear all this stuff about California and how liberal of a state it is and how liberal people are. But, obviously my focus was baseball. It was just a chance for me to speak my fortune, as they say. And just the family gets to talk about, you want to make it to the big leagues because they had this green and gold carpet in the Coliseum at that time. I don't know if you remember that, Bruce, but it was like a green and gold. It wasn't a standard carpet, but it was green and gold. That was his pitch line to kids in the minor leagues, trying to get them to, wanted them to get garden. It does seem like it was yesterday that all that stuff happened. Thanks for sharing it with your listening audience. But I was just a kid, just trying to find his way. It just happened. I happened to do some good stuff with a great supporting cast of the Reggie Jacksons and Sal Vandos and Gene Tennis's and Bert Custom Nurses and Dick Greens and
all those guys.
Dave Duncans of the world. And it was a great opportunity for me, and luckily I took advantage of it.
One thing I always remember too about Charlie Finley was that he was not the most generous guy. I mean, you had this great year, and I think you were being paid the minimum, which in those days was $14,500. I know it's hard for people to, who are sports fans today to believe. Usually players were being paid that little. Of course, $14,500 went a lot further in 1971. But the next year, Charlie offered you a raise, and he thought he was being charitable, offered you like $40,000 or something, and after.
I'm not even sure if it was that way, Bruce.
Yeah.
I tell you what, to have him to quote my dad, the 1.82 ERA and the 300 innings pitch and the 300 strikeouts and all that stuff, the open gate pitches. And he turned around and said, "Well, but I don't have to take it." The third call was not in effect at that time. It kind of put a hole in my heart. Here I have this young kid that had given as well as, be successful in my own right. But at that time, I might not have realized it at that time, but he was just telling me and telling the world that this is a business. And it put a hole in my heart that I don't think I've ever recovered from. Because, again, I was 18, 19 years old. I'm thinking, I did all this great stuff for this team and kind of came on the map in a sense. But this guy doesn't want to take me and show the gratitude of saying, "Hey, man, I'm going to reward you for your success." And let this kid make this work out. And, you want to have a happy employee, and I wasn't that happy. It really soured my stomach, and it left a bad taste.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, how did that affect? Because, you didn't just have the one good year, obviously, but it's weird because, part of you wants to do it for your team. You don't really want to do it for Charlie, but you also want to do it for yourself because, the better you do theoretically, you will make more money. So how did that affect your performance?
It was just one of those crazy situations where I caught in the crosshairs. And like I said, I still want to continue to be successful. At the same time, we're never going to, you always give it 100% every time, and that's where everybody else would respond in the sports arena of life also. You want to be the best you can be all the time. But at the same time, like I said, it soured my stomach. It just left a little small hole in my heart. And it took me a while to really understand, again, that this is business. It was a business when I was 21. It was a business when I was 36. And it's still a business today. And you would think that teams and players and organizations would have better relationships with each other. I guess what I'm saying is there's still a big distrust factor with the players and management ownership, you know?
Yeah, I was going to ask you if in your opinion, how has it changed? Well, I guess when you get the reserve clause, it's going to change things a little bit, free agency and all that kind of stuff. But I'm wondering, how much the business has changed.
Well, I don't know. It has changed because players have an option. If the team A doesn't want to pay them, they take their services to team B, C, and D, and all the rest of them. And that's what a free market should be about. If you can't sign a contract with your current team and you play out your options to have yourself, to buy yourself, to go out on the free open market, somebody's going to pay for your services. There's a team somewhere that says, this guy can help us. And the ultimate goal of all these teams is to A, get in the playoffs, and B, win the championship. So first things first when it comes to, signing players. But most players want to play for the current team that they're on, and some players want to play at Tracy or Blackberry. But all those things are open now because you are create the options to figure that stuff out yourself as an individual.
Yeah, and Bruce, you're quite a historian. Did this kind of go around like Kennesaw Landis?
You're talking about Vida's holdout or just baseball?
No. Just in general about like with the reserve clause.
Oh,
Because they didn't want guys just keep.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the fans, I think, and a lot of the media were against it because they thought it was going to change, and it did change the face of baseball. But it really hasn't. The good teams are still good. The bad teams are still bad, and you have to be skillful about how you get these guys. And speaking of good teams, we're talking with Vida Blue, who was a great pitcher on some great Oakland A's teams. I'm thinking, Vida, back to the early '70s when you guys were in your heyday. That was the first really great team out of Northern California in professional sports that sustained greatness year after year after year. 5 division titles, 3 World Series championships. What was it like being a part of that with Reggie and Ken Holtzman and Catfish Hunter and Raleigh Fingers and all these great Joe Rudy?
Well, that's a good captain that you just named. I just try to stay out of the way and stay below the radar. But again, with Reggie and Catfish and King Kenneth and Dick Green and Captain Anderson, Blue Moon and Raleigh Fingers and Holtzman, it was just a good run. As you mentioned, we had 5 years man with the 2 championships and the 5 division titles. I was just trying to stay out of the way, man, and hold my own and not embarrass myself when I feel.
Well, you were quite a trailblazer, if I remember. I think you were the first one who actually had his first name put on a back.
That's right, Vida on the back of your name. And what does Vida mean, Vida? Tell us what the word Vida means.
Well, I'm sure a lot of people know that Vida means life in Spanish, and a lot of across the country thought that I was from the island somewhere, from the Caribbean and stuff.
Yeah.
From Puerto Rico, from Dominican, I'm from Venezuela, and but I'm just a good old boy from Southwest Louisiana.
Well, in fact, my daughter started Tulane.
Yeah.
So
she's
down in Tulane University, and I told her, I said, what do you think about the weather? She goes, it's not California.
Yeah, you got spoiled by that.
But hey, Vida, stay with us a minute. We're going to cut to a commercial break here now. Again, in honor of the fact that Sunday is Super Bowl Sunday, we decided to have trivia questions on the Super Bowl.
And I'm not sure how big a football fan Vida is. I have a feeling he follows the game, but maybe we'll give him.
We'll
Yeah.
get with the first one. Okay, and then
you take an answer or take a shot at the first question.
Yeah. All right, and then if you know the answer, don't say it yet, because when we cut to commercial break, we'll do that when we come back and let you answer the question. But here's the first trivia question. Who was the first quarterback to throw for 400 yards in a Super Bowl? That's our trivia question, right?
Good question.
And that's a pretty good one. All right, email Edward at sportsecon101.com to answer this question. Who was the first quarterback in Super Bowl history to throw for 400 yards? All right, so when we come back, we'll answer that question. We'll continue with Vida Blue, the famed pitcher for the Oakland A's, and San Francisco Giants out there.
That's right. We got to get the Giants in there too.
All right, don't touch that dial. We're going to be right back.
All right. So, Vida, what you up to today, man?
I'm going over to the docks or the different clubs, regroup.
Oh, nice.
And then I'm at a 25 for tomorrow and see if I can hang it out. So that's what I got to do some yard work. I'm renting a house and I'm thinking about doing a little. I like to little stuff like that, like having guys put the carpet in and
Oh, nice.
think about buying the house and reselling it.
There you go. You live out in Tracy, right?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, the weather's pretty hot out there in the summer, isn't it?
Yeah, it's nice, man. I can handle more heat than I can cold.
Yeah.
Cold weather guy.
I hear you, man.
Especially from Louisiana.
Yeah. Growing up in Louisiana, we're gonna say it's you're used to it, man.
Yeah, well, minus the humidity, man. So I hope
Yeah.
Over time that's too late, and hopefully she'll accomplish what she put down there. Well, what she
She's majoring in political economy. So so it's kind of a combination of economics and poli-sci.
Interesting.
Kind of neat. Yeah, she's a sharp cookie.
Well, she's in the right place. They have some politicians that moved in, so she's in the right place to see it live and in person.
There you go. Yeah,
exactly.
That's true.
All right, here we go. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. One more time. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Bruce McGowan. First trivia question about the Super Bowl. Who was the first quarterback to throw for 400 yards in a Super Bowl?
I'm gonna let our guest take a stab at that. I have kind of a. Who do you think, Vida?
I need one more clue.
Okay, one more clue.
NFC quarterback.
NFC.
Okay.
Yes, you just knocked out half of the. and you got to figure it didn't happen in the first 20 years, right?
Yeah. I got an idea, but I'm not.
NFC. I'm going with Joe Montana.
That's who I was gonna go with.
No,
But it's not Joe Montana.
No, Kurt Warner.
Kurt Warner.
In 2000 against the Titans.
Wow. Yeah, they're going to show it. And that was, it's funny, that was the last Super Bowl I ever covered in 19. It was actually early 2000. And I remember Tennessee almost pulled that out.
Yeah.
Steve McNair
It tackled it.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Mike Jones, a linebacker of the Rams, tackled, I think it was Dyson, the tight end, and just about a yard short of the tight end. Yeah.
That's pretty cool about Warner because he came from the arena football.
That's right, he did. Well, he wasn't highly touted. Vida, you came out of the minor leagues. I know people had talked about you, but did your success, it wasn't instant, but I mean, within a couple of years, you were one of the best pitchers in the game. Did that have both a positive and a negative effect? Because you set the bar so high that anything you did after that would have been kind of a letdown, but at the same time, I mean, confidence-wise, that must have just done amazing things for how you felt about yourself as a player in your future.
It did, but you're right. I set the bar pretty high, and it was at 20.8, and now you go like, how can I top that and have won the awards, both awards in that same year? You go like, oh boy, I didn't look around and realize that you have set the bar very high, and how to stop that. And you can't go out there and do what you can do. There's only so much you can control there, and that's what I tried to do. I kind of came back down to earth after the 72 season because I held out that whole winter. And 72 was pretty sure we won the World Series, so it all wasn't a loss. But personally, I didn't have it. I think I was like 60 or something like that. I always remember that. But anyway, winning the World Series was gold. That's what we accomplished in 2, 3, and 4. And of course, we're one of only 2 teams that beat, so I'm pretty proud of that.
Yeah.
I had a pretty good run, guys. So I'm thankful for my lucky start and my great supporting cast and the fans keep having fans in the East Bay and fans in the West Bay. So I'm pretty lucky to have transplanted myself from Louisiana into the Bay Area.
Interesting sidelight to fight. In 1972, you mentioned you held out, you didn't have a great season, and Dick Williams used you in relief in a number of, I think, a couple of games in the World Series, didn't he, against Cincinnati?
Well, yes, I was, but the key was the series in Detroit. I came in and released Blue Moon Older and pitched the last 4 innings of that ball game. So I like to think that I'm the guy that was just responsible for thanks to the World Series. And then I went 3 for 3, so I pitched the last 4 shutout innings, I think.
Wow.
That's great. In fact, I remember Blue Moon, they used to bring him in as a pinch hitter. He was one of the few pitchers who they'd bring in because he was that good at hitting. I forgot to look at your stats. Were you a pretty decent hitter?
No.
Well, fair enough.
Well, you got to remember the DH came along in 73.
Yeah.
That's all I had.
Well, and you got to be careful because being a pitcher, it's easy to pull a an oblique or some other muscle. I mean, that's why you see guys getting up there and really not trying that because they don't want to get hurt.
Yeah, a lot of teams tell my guys to stay out of the way because the other guys in the lineup to hit home runs, to drive and runs, and hit the ball out of the park. So I kind of took it as I do the fun side of the face now.
Yeah, the worst thing is when you see a pitcher hitting a double play and you go, look at him strike out.
Yeah, I gotta ask Vida about Reggie Jackson because kind of a larger than life figure. He was the heart and soul in some respects of your team, at least offensively. And of course, he felt that way. He let you know that. What was Reggie Jackson like? You got to know him pretty well. You guys may not have been bosom buddies, but you were teammates for several years.
And watch him on the field. He was a bona fide superstar, and he would let you know that, like you said. But he was very solid, After the ball game, he would take the pressure off the rest of us because he was a good cop. The guys together around his loss. Joe Rudy hit the game-winning double, but the next day the folks were front leg, And we wanted to live with him, but he was very simple little guy. He's kind of mellowed out the last couple of years, which I have seen a couple of times up the dropouts. And he's the guy that was a great self-promoter. Sometimes that's not a bad thing.
And have they had in the last so many years they've had like celebratory
reunions and so on. Yeah, I mean, you guys have. And you still get together once in a while with some of your teammates. You keep in touch with guys like Raleigh Fingers and Joe Rudy and people like that. Do you see them at event campaigns?
Joe Rudy, I see Gene Fingers a lot. Actually, I'm going to be going down to Arizona. I think I'll see Blue Moon at today's day. Plus, this is the 50th year of the A's being in Oakland, and they're playing a big celebration of that. They had a survey and they took the top players of all time in A's Oakland A's history, and luckily I made the cut. So they're going to have a big thing about the history of the A's of celebrating 50 years of Oakland, guys.
Wow, that's great. It must hurt you though to see the A's going through this weird purgatory kind of state where every year they bring up these young players. Every year, within a couple of years, they're traded, and it's almost like they're a farm system for the rest of baseball. I mean, the fans.
Yeah, it does get frustrating because you want that core group of players to play together and establish themselves, but the powers that be see it differently, and I wish I could have wave a magic wand and say keep this core group of players together for the next 3 years and see what happens, but the powers that be, like I mentioned, have different thoughts on that.
That's just the way it is.
It's like you said, it's a business.
Yeah, that's what it is, man. And it will always be that. It's a kid's game played by young men, and it's a great spectator sport, but the business out of it never goes away.
Yeah, somebody once said, I think it was a ball player said, you can't take the little boy out of a player because the enthusiasm is there.
Well, like I said, guys, even today when I get out to go to clinics and put on my uniform, or even just my jersey, and put on my ball cap and grab my mitt, it brings back the eternal spring of being a young man.
And speaking of being a young man, you were in your prime years, you were at your peak years, when the A's, who had basically given away Charlie, was selling the team off, and he finally traded you to the Giants for, I think, was it 6 guys in 1978? 6 players?
Players and a 6-pack of Budweiser.
But that was kind of a neat thing for you because that year the Giants, who had been pretty bad for several years, made a run and were in first place much of the season, and you were a big part of that, buddy. You won 18 games that year.
Well, we celebrated by setting the all-time attendance record, which was like 800,000 that year. Had guys like Jack Clark and Terry Williams, had a great pitching staff, and balanced it. Had a young Bob Pepper, a veteran, and Joe Busco, Jim Barr, Randy Moffitt, and was in the bullpen.
Gary Lavelle, I remember, was on that team, wasn't he?
Yeah, a great small team, but they never put it together. We made a pretty good run, and we still out in September, and the Dodgers ended up beating us and win the division. Actually, ended up in third place. I think Cincinnati beat the ball just ended up in third place. It was like a 14-game swing in the month of September under that overalignment with Atlanta and Houston, San Diego, and they played head-to-head. Everybody played the same common opponent that last month of the season, and we just ran out of gas and get it done, unfortunately.
I remember a guy named Mike Ivey who was your top pinch hitter, and I think he hit a grand slam in that season against the Dodgers in May. And the highlight of that, you can still hear it from time to time, being on Bay Area radio stations. Lon Simmons calls it, and Lon sounds so happy. It sounds like he's about to cry. I mean, Mike Ivey kind of came out of nowhere. He was your secret weapon, wasn't he?
He's a big, strong guy.
Yeah.
That's Mike, a.k.a. Poison Eye.
Yeah. Yeah, he was something else to watch. What else?
Wasn't he who cut his hand with a knife?
Oh, Jesus.
It's left fielder.
Well, no, Mike was the first
baseman. First baseman, yeah.
Yeah.
Mike Ivey was the number one draft choice by the Padres, I think, and he could catch it, and he didn't want to catch it. He played first base and doing some pitch hitting for the Giants, but he didn't want to catch it. So I was not sure if they were overwhelming the responsibility for the big league catcher, but something he ended up being saved to the Giants, and he did stay as a first baseman, of course.
Wow. And of course, we talked about the A's winning 3 World Series championships. By the end of '74, you guys were clearly one of the great teams in the history of baseball. Did you think it was going to go on forever, or did you have a feeling after '74 that this was pretty much the end of the road?
No, I was still that young, naive 24-year-old kid that thought that this was great, winning the championship and winning the division. I thought it was going to go on forever.
Hey, you just said it to you, hey, man, this is easy.
Yeah, that's right. You have that attitude. Oh, we just wanted us to do it. But 74, 75, Boston beat us to eliminate us. That's when Boston played the Cincinnati Reds.
Yeah.
And remember when Carson Fisk hit the home run, he was throwing his hands to keep his stand up. They had eliminated the A's. But I think it's like a 2-3 series at that time.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Hey, Vida, stay with us one more time. We got to cut to a quick break here. Again, we're talking Super Bowl history here, trivia. Which running back had not fumbled all season, only to fumble in the first quarter in Super Bowl 6?
Super Bowl 6.
I got to give you the Super Bowl. Okay. Don't touch that dial. We're going to be right back.
Okay.
Sorry about that. They get these hard breaks.
All right. Yeah, what a beautiful day, huh, Vida?
Yeah, it is, man. It's gorgeous.
Yeah,
It's supposed to get warmer as the week progresses, and next week's supposed to be nice and toasty, comfortable.
Yeah.
But it's winter time, man. It's not even spring.
I know. I kind of worry about it. If we don't start getting rain in about a week, they're going to start talking drought again here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been seeing on the news and weather reports that and they're supposed to check the snowpack sometime not today, maybe tomorrow, and I don't think it's looking too good.
It's not that bad, but it isn't. They need to get some more. Those last storms help, but we need it.
Wasn't it like last year it filled everything up?
Well, last year we had that amazing January and February. It was crazy. Yeah.
I mean,
The problem is you don't want all this, you don't want the rain all that much.
once,
No.
exactly.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we're in a weather pattern now where things are changing. So, anyway, all right.
All right, we'll keep you on for one more segment, and then we'll cut this off.
Okay, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Vida.
All right, here we go.
No worries.
Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Edward Brown here along with Bruce McGowan and our special guest, Vida Blue. Trivia question number 2. Which running back had not fumbled all season only to fumble in the first quarter in Super Bowl 6?
I got this one.
You got this one?
NFC, AFC, NFC.
Wait, I thought you said you have it.
AFC back on
AFC.
Thurman Thomas.
Well, Thurman Thomas
This
was
is
with the
before.
Cowboys, but still, that's the guy I would have thought too, because Dallas beat Miami that year in the Super Bowl. But I don't think maybe it wasn't Thurman Thomas.
No. That's how he would have been around. It's my bad.
Larry Zonka.
Yes.
Larry Zonka.
Yeah. He hadn't fumbled all season.
Jeez.
I mean, that guy was just a bull.
Yeah, Larry Zonka from the University of Syracuse. If I got to ask you, because it is Super Bowl week, you were a good athlete. I would assume you played a little high school football, or did you back in the day?
I was a triple option quarterback. Yeah.
Wow. Were you pretty good? I imagine you were.
They threw the guys big to get loose. I was as good as the team allowed me to be, and I had a great complement of players on my team. So a lot of times the quarterback gets too much glory when you win and too much blame when you lose. But I had a good went to college, and obviously didn't go to the next level, but it was a fun ride for me. I played as a sophomore at Duke, Tennessee. I played 3 years in football.
Wow.
And started like 2.5 years. Started the second half of the season as a sophomore, which is a lot of fun.
A lefty quarterback. I love that. And you know, did you have opportunities, college scholarship possibilities, or did you think baseball was your first love and that's where I'm going?
Yeah, baseball was it, but I thought I was a better football player. But unfortunately, my father passed my senior year in high school, and my mom, you know, mom wants you to go to school to get that diploma and hang it on the wall. But being oldest of 6 kids, I became the breadwinner for the family, and I talked my mom into letting me out the baseball thing. You know, of course, having signed the contract, that was the source of income for my 4 sisters and my brother and my mom. And it worked out for the best, man. What can I say?
Did you ever go back to college to get a degree?
I ever went there?
Did you ever go back to college to get a degree?
No.
Well, it's never too late.
Yeah, it's never too late. Yeah. But I've been educated. I'm the one in my family that's the least educated book-wise, but I've been all over the world, and my 4 sisters are very educated and graduated with honors and stuff. But they've been to Germany and been to Korea and been to Vietnam and home. So I think it worked out for you.
Yeah, 4 sisters, and you were older than your 4 sisters. What was that like? You were kind of like keeping them in line, or were they kind of keeping you on your
No,
toes?
they kept me in line.
Yeah. So your mom was, man, 6 kids, a brother and 4 sisters. Wow. How did she handle that with your dad? Your dad died, I think he was wasn't he in the steel mines, and he got the black
I worked in a steel mill. Yeah.
steel mill. Yeah. And he got the black lung disease or something.
Yeah, I think.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
Hey, well, when did
I
you?
would like to do the right thing with my family.
Yeah.
You mentioned being with Bob Hope. Was it like overseas?
That's a USO tour, I think,
Yeah.
right?
I was the celebrity jock on the tour with them in '71.
Oh, so during the Vietnam War.
And Jim Davis and Charlie
yeah.
Pride. And,
Charlie Pride.
I think Anna Marjorie was somebody, one of those bum shows that
Wow.
And Lance Brown and Diana
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Oh, yeah.
Bob Hope, though. Did you get to know him a little bit on that tour? What was he like?
I did. He was the ultimate entertainer, man. He was always telling jokes, and he's an avid golfer too. So just having the chance to do a little skit with him, and remember like it was yesterday that we were the name Vietnam on Christmas Day, 1971, with about 10,000 troops wearing ponchos and a misty rain, and guys sitting up on this hill, and we're down on this little down in the space. But they're the family troops, let them know that we care about them, and that they're what makes America what it is today, you know.
Yeah. I was going to say a lot of our listeners are listening via the Armed Forces Radio Network in far-flung places like Afghanistan, the Middle East. Do you have anything you wanted to say to the guys, Vida, while you're
The guys, the gals,
the gals too? Yeah, that's right.
That's right. Yeah.
I'm so proud of what you do, and I appreciate what you do. The ultimate sacrifice for your life on the line every day. Hey man, keep up the good work and get your tails back home safely.
Yeah, definitely.
Now you, it's interesting because I was thinking about guys like Ted Williams and all that got drafted. Find out what year were you born?
Why did that?
Oh, come on! It's not like a woman asking the weight.
No, I think Vida was born in 40. Weren't you born in 49, Vida?
I was, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
same age as my brother. So he would have been,
Could have been drafted.
but he could have been. No, you were in. I think you were in the National Guard or something, weren't you?
I worked at the Open Organization, worked at the city for 6 years while I was playing baseball.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, they made you do that because if you were of draft, if you were of eligibility, the draft age, you had to figure out. I mean, if you were working, you had kind of a deferment, but you still had to put in your time. I remember that.
That National Guard work, but I still get all the stuff that do that go overseas, and I did my basic training at Fort Bragg and
Fort Bragg.
back home, with that backpack.
Oh man, Fort Bragg is infamous for being one of the toughest places. Did its reputation live up to it?
That's the home of the 82nd Airborne, Bruce. So,
Yeah.
so those guys guys, that's total empty. So those guys had to go to aircrew school and learn how to jump and all that stuff. But
Yeah.
I went there with my whole unit was all reservists from California, guys from around the country. And we knew we were going to do the thing and go back to our jobs in our lives as divisions. But the real soldiers, they had a Scott next year, whether it's that with regular Army. And I was very lucky that one of the good things that Charlie Finn did get me to the reserve, but I know that it's a great sacrifice to join the military for the families and the troops, and you never can say enough about what those men and women do when it comes to making a sacrifice for us.
I was going to say during that time, no question. And during that time too, the late 60s, early 70s, we were both young kids. You were a little older than me, but that was the time of Vietnam, a very divisive war, the civil rights era, women's rights, environmental rights, the hippies. I mean, it was kind of a crazy time. I guess baseball kind of kept you on the straight and narrow there, huh?
Yeah, it was something that I have to focus on because you leave, once you leave high school and go to the pros, it's your job. It's not just a game. It's your job. It's your livelihood. So you have to really stay focused on what your goals are and what you're trying to accomplish. And I played single A, double A, triple A. My fourth year, I made it to the major leagues, but that winter time, I had gone to Fort Bragg to go to basic training. I left there and went back to my mom's house about a week, and I left my house, which spring training. I made the team and made to the military. I got to give a shout out to Fort Bragg for getting me in the best shape I've been in my whole life.
Yeah, Vida was quite a specimen and he had that blue blazer. And the thing about you, Vida, I don't remember you ever having any arm problems. You had a kind of a bionic arm. You probably could have pitched well into your 40s if you wanted to.
Nolan Ryan.
I got shit back there, but I was just blessed with good genes. I got to give a shout out to my mom and dad. And I owed on to them. I had good genes. So luckily, knock on wood, I never had any arm trouble. And until this day, I still throw with no pain a little bit, but I don't flaunt that. I just go out and play with the kids. And I know my limits. I feel like that. I'm on a pitch count these days.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember. I know you had a lot of good stuff. When you threw your fastball, what was the velocity?
Oh, I averaged 90, 91.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I told Billy Dean if he needed someone to throw in the high 60s, he could call me, but he hasn't taken me up on that offer yet.
Oh man, well, it's such a pleasure getting Vida on here. I just love Vida. As Vida gets older, as we all get older, we become a little more reflective. We become maybe a little more serious, but also really appreciate where we've been and what we've been through. And I know it hasn't been everybody thinks about a major league guy who played for 17 years like Vida did. It's all been roses and championships, and there's been some ups and downs and highs and lows. But it seems like the journey you've really appreciated the journey you've been on.
I've had a good run, Bruce, and I appreciate you guys having me on, man.
Absolutely, love having you.
I do appreciate life and everything in it a little bit more these days, and life is good.
You want to make a Super Bowl prediction before we let you go?
Yeah, Belichick is good at what he does. He has a great supporting cast with him and that guy that wears number 12. And they're pretty good. But should be a great, interesting game, but it could come down to that last 2 minutes again. And New England is noted for those comebacks. So let's see how it plays out. But I'm looking forward to the game, and it should be some good entertainment for us on Sunday.
Super Bowl 52. Well, Vida Blue, what a pleasure again to always chat with you. It's great. I really appreciate your friendship over the years. You've been such a big part of the Bay Area sports scene and of baseball in general. So keep smiling and keep enjoying life, and we'll talk again.
Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks, you guys.
Thanks, Vida, for coming.
All right, man. All right, just a great guy. Vida Blue, of course, one of those names too. Even if you're not from his area, if you're a young kid, when I say young kid, anybody under 40 to me is a young kid. But you remember that name. That's a name that resonates because it's it's special. It really is.
Well, and I'm trying to remember if there was kind of a little bit of an upheaval for him putting his first name on the back of the jersey.
Yeah.
Big deal out
Well, and Charlie Finley, we didn't talk to him about this. Charlie Finley, nicknamed Catfish Hunter. He thought it was a good marketing tool to sell tickets, and I think he gave Catfish $5,000 or something. And he went up to Vida and he said, how about if we name you True, we'll change your first name to True. So you'd be True Blue. And Vida said, look, my dad is Vida Blue and I'm Vida Blue Jr. And I'm not giving up my name. My dad, I'm honoring my father. Charlie didn't like that. And that's, Vida and Charlie did not see eye to eye. Of course, Charlie didn't see eye to eye with a lot of people. I dealt with Charlie Finley a few times later in life, and he was a curmudgeon. He was irascible and not very likable. Let's put it that way. But you got to give the guy his due. He put together a great team.
You know, I mean, it's one thing to say, hey, can we give you a nickname of True?
Yeah.
But you don't, like,
he wanted to
legally change
he
it?
wanted to legally change it and or you know, at least be referred to by the broadcasters and the writers as True Blue. And Vida said, no, I'm not doing that. I don't blame him. That's embarrassing, you know, to do somebody.
I mean, it's one thing. I mean, Catfish is sort of a kind of a fun thing.
Well, and also
like True Blue, it almost is a little bit too ostentatious.
Catfish went along with that. Jim Hunter, because he grew up along a river in North Carolina somewhere, and he used to like to go fishing. So Charlie heard this story from Catfish about how he liked to sit by the river and put the pole in the water. And hey, how about if we call you Catfish? Because you caught a lot of catfish back there. Charlie was a good old boy from Alabama, so he knew about the Deep South. So. Yeah, late great Charlie Finley. What a character.
I'm just glad he didn't call Sal Bando Salmonella then.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Okay, you ready for our last trivia question?
Yes.
All right. Again, we're talking Super Bowl trivia questions. This will probably be our last Super Bowl question until next year.
Until next year.
Get back into baseball again.
Baseball.
Yeah.
Baseball.
Which Super Bowl, you'll probably know the answer to this one, which Super Bowl quarterback was almost suspended before the Super Bowl amongst rumors that he had been gambling?
Oh, yeah, I know that one.
You know that one.
Yeah.
All right, so that's our trivia question, and you want to email Edward at sportsecon101.com. We'll see if you're the first caller with this answer. Which Super Bowl quarterback was almost suspended before the Super Bowl amongst rumors that he had been gambling? Which is kind of surprising because I never knew this guy had this reputation.
No.
He seemed to have a decent one.
Yeah.
All right. Don't touch that dial. Sports Econ 101. We're going to be right back. All right.
Vida just texted me and said, thanks, guys.
Yeah, he's great.
I said back, thanks so much. That was great fun as usual. Yeah, Vida sounded a little more serious and he was a little more measured and a little more articulate this time. I think getting older, you know, you slow down and kind of, I don't know. It was interesting because I have these, I think I told you I used to do these series of talks at the Throckmorton Theater for a couple years, right before we started.
Yeah.
And Vida was one of the early ones that I was listening to on the other day. I had the people there give me CDs for each one of them. So I'm listening to Vida tell these stories, and this was like 6-7 years ago.
Yeah.
God. 7 years ago? That 2011, so it would have been 7 years ago. Yeah. God. The last 7-8 years just flown by.
Yeah.
Just flown by. Since my daughter turned 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's almost 13 now.
But so you listened to it and what he sounded?
Well, no, I just say, you know, he and I were both younger. He was, you know, he's closing in on 70 now. He's 68. So, you know, you get to that point in life, I think, where you just slow down, become more reflective. I feel like the last year, I think it's probably
part of just the work and
and the thing with Colette at my age. But I'm just realizing, hey, you know, take a breath once in a while.
Absolutely.
Take your time. You're not in a hurry anymore.
How many people showed up at that one?
With Vida, we had, I'm going to say 50. I'm going to say we averaged about 50 to 70 people a show, which wasn't enough to pay the bills, and they were nice enough to let me. John Miller packed the house. We had 250 for him. We had over 180 for JT Snow. Orlando did pretty well. But, you know, there were a couple guys like Bob St. Clair, unfortunately, only got about 15 or 20.
A lot of people wouldn't remember.
What a great story.
Oh, yeah.
You know, Keenan Turner, we got about 30, but Keenan was great. One of my favorites was George Atkinson and Fred Biletnikoff together. And we had about, I'd say, 75, 80 for that one. So, yeah, it was
again,
fun.
you're going to get the older people.
I was getting the storytellers, all the old guys. Yeah, it was fun.
In fact, you would have enjoyed, because you grew up here. I should have told you about it. My friend Kramer, he's a videographer, and he
Jerry Seinfeld's buddy, right?
No, and he grew up here. He went to Santa Fe High.
Oh,
and he's older than you,
right?
But he's putting together. It's called Sparkplug Cowboys. It was basically about the car clubs of the '50s in Marin.
Oh yeah.
So you would have.
This is a different. I remember. Well, the '50s. I wasn't really that aware of all the things that were going on, but I remember in the late '50s, early '60s, rock and roll era, you know, and John Kennedy, and you know, you become more. Your world begins to widen when you're about 7, 8, 9. You're suddenly aware that it's more than just your little neighborhood, your little house. And man, what a time to be a kid in the '60s.
I remember Kennedy getting shot.
Yeah,
not John, but I remember Robert.
Well, I remember at school it was horrible, and coming home, my mom sitting in front of the black and white TV crying, and you know, we spent most of the weekend watching TV. And it's interesting, from the time he got shot till the end of the funeral on Monday, JFK, it was nonstop television coverage with no commercials, all in black and white, and it went on for three and a half days. And it was really when television news took over. That's when TV news became. Before that, network news was never more than 15 minutes. Local news was never more than 15 minutes. And from that point on, television news became preeminent. It was big in the 50s, but not nearly as big as it became in the 60s and 70s. Yeah. 60s and 70s was really the heyday for TV news. 60s, 70s, and 80s. Yeah. That was a great time to be a broadcaster. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Here we go.
Okay.
Well, welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Last time for today, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Bruce McGowan. Third trivia question: which Super Bowl quarterback was almost suspended before the Super Bowl amongst
The basket kids are so spaced out sometimes. I mean, I never have that happen with work.
Well, no, I mean,
because that's my
pay, yeah,
right?
Exactly. There's a little bit of a difference between this and KCBS.
Well, it's interesting. The game 95.7 is moving in with us. They're part of Intercom, which owns. And I've been encouraged, to maybe do a little freelance work for them on the side. And I think is I like working the hours I do. I could always use a little more money, but I don't know how much of a commitment I want to make to.
Would KCBS have a problem?
No. That's what I've been encouraged by KCBS to do that, just because we're all part of the same family now.